Today's video is brought to you by Morgan & Morgan. Next month will make a year since Dexter New Blood premiered, and I'm still a little bit on the fence about it. It has some truly unforgettable highs, but it also had some really unforgivable lows. The series kinda just fizzled away instead of going out with the bang that I'd hoped. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. For context, I really love the original Dexter series. I didn't catch his original run, no surprise, but back in 2018, my cousin Dre put me onto the show, and it quickly became one of my favorites. I've watched the series multiple times since, and we talk about the show constantly, so I figured it'd only be right to have him on to give his perspective later on in the video as well. What I loved about Dexter New Blood is honestly that it really nailed home the genius but strange concept of the original series. On one hand, you love the character of Dexter. He's extremely charming, he's funny, but a little awkward and quirky. You really just want to see the man succeed, but on the other hand, he has this dark passenger he exercises by killing criminals. The big difference between Dexter and any other regular antagonist that we would root for is we know in the back of our minds, as cathartic as his vigilante justice may be, he's in the wrong. So whether it's justice from the universe or the actual judicial system, we know he's gonna have to one day pay for these crimes. That's why the ending of season 4 hits so hard. It creates this strange internal conflict for us as viewers. It perfectly manages to have him face consequences for his actions, while also breaking our hearts to see him lose everything he tried so hard to keep. I say this to Dre all the time, but if the original series would have ended at season 4, in my opinion, it would have been the greatest series of all time, especially in its genre. But they ended up stretching the series out way too long and completely missed the mark with the ending. That's honestly why I was really excited for Dexter New Blood. It was really in a unique position. It didn't have to be better than the original. It didn't have to top it in any way. It just had to have a better finale. That's it. And if you've seen that original series finale, it wouldn't seem like that would be a very hard thing to do. But man, did they fumble at the 1-yard line. Me and Dre have a pretty similar outlook on the episodes leading up to the finale, so I'm going to let him briefly touch on those before we get into how they fumbled the ball twice.
So, Dexter New Blood. I think I speak for all Dexter fans when I say that the anticipation for this series was unlike anything else. I've never seen a group of people collectively hate a final season the way the Dexter fans did season 8. So the news that we'd be getting a reboot with Clyde Phillips returning was a bombshell, and I was extremely enthusiastic about the potential that this reboot had to redeem both Dexter as a character and as a series. When Dexter New Blood premiered with its pilot episode Cold Snap, I was blown away. I enjoyed how they gave us a modern, fresh feel while also staying true to the original. They played up the suspense and anticipation with perfect pace, and the payoff was well worth the pain of season 8. Dexter fans worldwide rejoiced when the dark passenger returned in the 11th hour of the episode. They even brought back his iconic theme music. The level of execution, pun intended, made us all remember why the original run of Dexter was regarded as one of, if not the best show on television during its first 4 seasons. Harrison's return was expected, but still well written. I love the dynamic that they gave their relationship and the fact that Dexter doesn't just immediately welcome him with open arms. One detail I did take issue with is that Harrison states that he had no family or anyone to go to once Hannah died. I find this strange, as Aster and Cody should both be adults by now, and the fact that he didn't even attempt to reach out to them was a major oversight in my opinion. Still, I was absolutely hooked, and I couldn't wait until next week's episode. The blistering start, however, was not a sign of things to come. My interest in the series quickly waned with each episode as details were retcons, endings were rushed, and Dexter's writers seemed to have found themselves in no man's land. Dexter's detective girlfriend Angela outsmarted Frank Lundy, the entire Miami Metro Homicide Department, the FBI, and Dexter Morgan himself by building a supposedly rock-solid case against Dexter as the Bay Harbor Butcher, and did so in an impressively short amount of time. The M99 ketamine retcon was the most glaring mistake in my opinion, seeing as the original run had multiple storylines tied to this. Additionally, there were many facts about Angela's research of the Bay Harbor Butcher case, including the ease of which she was able to access the files that were egregious. I mean, come on. Google, All told, Angela's case was, in my opinion, much too weak to ever get any type of conviction, and Dexter's killing of Logan was entirely against Harry's code. His situation never seemed dire enough to make that type of rash decision, as Dexter had been far closer to capture before and still had the wherewithal to think things through. The ending for the show seemed telegraphed and rushed. I had a sense that Harrison would end up killing Dexter about halfway through the finale, and by the end of it, I wished that they would have never brought back Dexter after all. I still have a little bit of a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach with the way the New Blood ended, and as much as it pains me to say, maybe season 8 wasn't so bad after all.
Okay, so I don't quite have the same level of disdain for the entire series as Dre did. There were actually a lot of elements that I really liked. It was dope to see Dexter actually have to try to be a dad. We didn't get much of that in the original series because Harrison was so young. Dexter could pretty much just pop in and out of his life when he pleased. But here is a really pivotal time in Harrison's life, and Dexter notices that, and he's really trying to be there for him, but he just doesn't know how. Now, me and Dre both mentioned we like the dynamic between Harrison and Dexter, but I do feel that stretched out a little bit too long. After a while where Harrison was blatantly lying, Dexter clearly knew this and was just trying to offer a lending ear to Harrison and let him know that he's here for him and here to help him in the best way that somebody as emotionally disconnected as Dexter can do. And Harrison was just going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole and getting mad at Dexter for not believing him, even though he was clearly right. Like, it just felt like manufactured drama that didn't really have much weight to it. But I get it. Harrison didn't quite trust Dexter yet because he hasn't been too forthcoming about really anything pertaining to his past. That's the thing that pushed him towards Kurt, because he felt like Kurt was more like him than Dexter was. And the tension between Dexter and Kurt was handled masterfully, in my opinion. They both kind of look down on each other as if anything that either of them are doing is the right thing to do. A lot of the things that people took issue with in this last few episodes of the series is Dexter's demeanor changed a lot from what we've seen him in the previous series. But surprisingly, that wasn't something that actually bothered me. I thought it was fitting that he was a little messy, a little rusty, a little impulsive. I mean, he hasn't let the Dark Passenger loose in 10 years. So I think it was a smart writing decision to have him be a little more impulsive with it, to have him be a little rusty and sloppy. I like how flustered that Kurt made Dexter. It was cool to see him scramble and not always be in control. Even though it stretched out a little bit too long, that reveal in episode 9 where Dexter tells him about his dark thoughts and violent tendencies was extremely cathartic to watch. Episode 9 was probably my second favorite episode after the pilot episode, but they also left a lot of things up in the air, and I like that aspect as well because there could have been so many different ways that they went into that finale. Speaking of, let's talk about this finale, shall we? There were so many missed opportunities with this finale, and on top of that, it just felt extremely rushed. I understand Dexter acting out of character in some situations, but killing Logan in the jail really made no sense, and I hate that because that one defining moment is what ended up changing the fate at the end, where Harrison inevitably kills him. I hate how they introduce Batista and only use him as a plot device so he can randomly tell Angela about Dexter Morgan, who had a son named Harrison. Don't get me wrong, I understand what they were going for. There is something slightly poetic about Harrison killing Dexter. Essentially, Dexter has become the very type of person that would end up on his table. But I hate it because much like the ending of the original Dexter series, it's such a cop-out. Dexter doesn't have to face any real consequences for his actions. In the original series, he goes off to be a lumberjack and start a completely new life. And in this series, instead of going to prison and facing Batista, facing the Miami Metro Department for all of the kills that he commits back in Miami, facing Angela for lying to her and everyone in the town for all these years, and more than likely being shipped back to Florida to be put on death row. He doesn't have to face any of those consequences. He simply gets to be shot and put out of his misery. So not only does he once again not have to face up to his actions, but he also willingly traumatizes his already madly traumatized son in a weird way that only suggests some type of spin-off in the future, which I just hope and pray that they do not do. If you're gonna go the route of Dexter dying, I think the only satisfactory way to do that is to have had him go back to Florida and face up to his crimes as the Bay Harbor Butcher. In my opinion, it's the logical choice, but I guess I respect the swing. But once again, man, they missed the mark entirely. If I could ask Dexter one question, it would probably be, does size matter? And no, I'm not talking about your little Jimmy Dean. I'm talking about legal representation. Morgan & Morgan, to be exact. America's largest injury law firm. So please get your mind out of the gutter. Over 3 million people have chosen to put their trust in Morgan & Morgan, and it's for good reason. It's because they're for the people and they fight to win. As a matter of fact, there's so much for the people, if they don't win your case, you don't have to pay a single dime. Yes, you heard that right. You don't pay a single dime to Morgan & Morgan unless your case is won and that settlement check shows up in your mailbox. There are absolutely zero hidden fees. So if you're a skeptical and slightly frugal person like myself, that has to be music to your ears. Their services are available in 49 of the 50 states. So if you're in a position where you might need to file an injury lawsuit, make sure you check out Morgan & Morgan at forthepeople.com. The link will be in the description.